My pregnant sister's husband got angry when I got a boyfriend. Living with my sister and her husband seemed like the perfect arrangement at first. As a 19-year-old college freshman, I couldn't afford the dorms, and Sarah's house was just 15 minutes from campus. After our parents moved across the country for work, it made sense for everyone. Sarah was finally pregnant after 3 devastating miscarriages, and she said having me around would help keep her mind occupied during her high-risk pregnancy. Mark, my brother-in-law, was enthusiastically supportive of the idea. He even cleared out their home office to make me a bedroom, personally painting it my favorite color and building shelves for my books. Looking back, I should have noticed how he insisted on doing it all himself, how he wanted to be the hero of every situation. The first 2 months were actually great. Mark would insist on driving me to early morning classes when my old Honda wouldn't start, always ready with a coffee and concerned questions about whether I was eating enough or needed anything for school. He was the perfect protective big brother figure, exactly what everyone said he was. Sarah would beam with pride watching him take care of her little sister. Then came the questions about my social life. They started casually enough, asking about friends from class, whether I was meeting new people. But Mark seemed particularly interested in whether I was dating anyone. When he asked directly one evening, while Sarah was at her prenatal yoga class, I lied and said no. I didn't mention Alex, the guy I'd been talking to for a few weeks. It wasn't serious enough to call it dating, I told myself. But really, something in Mark's intense stare made me want to keep that part of my life private. I didn't realize then that this simple lie would turn my safe haven into a nightmare. That Mark's perfect brother-in-law act was just that, an act. Or that watching Sarah's dream of motherhood finally coming true would become the chain that kept me silent about what was to come. Life fell into a comfortable routine that fall. Sarah was finally past the dangerous first trimester, her excitement growing with each successful doctor's appointment. She'd spend hours discussing nursery themes and baby names, while Mark played the perfect husband, attending every appointment, bringing her late-night snacks, making sure she didn't strain herself. Mark was equally attentive to my needs. When my car broke down before an early morning class, he insisted on driving me, despite having to go to work later. He'd check if I needed anything from the store when he went shopping, remember my favorite snacks, and even installed a better desk lamp in my room when he noticed me studying late. The only strange thing was his timing. He always seemed to be around, fixing something in the garden when I was at the pool, doing house repairs when I was home, appearing in the hallway just as I finished showering. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Mark was just a hands-on kind of guy who liked keeping busy around the house. He asked a lot of questions about college life, especially about the people I was meeting. College kids can get pretty wild, he'd say casually. Sarah would kill me if anything happened to you on our watch. It seemed like normal protective brother-in-law behavior, though something about his constant presence started to make me slightly uncomfortable. But with Sarah so happy and everything else going so well, I pushed these thoughts aside. I met Alex in my literature class. He sat next to me for 3 weeks before finally asking for my number. We started texting, then getting coffee after class. He was sweet and funny, but given my past relationships had all fizzled quickly, I kept it casual. When Mark asked about my social life one evening, I didn't think it was worth mentioning these coffee meetups. That Thursday changed everything. My car was in the shop, and Mark was supposed to pick me up after class. Alex and I had lost track of time studying in the library, so he offered to drive me home. Just as he leaned in to hug me goodbye in front of the house, Mark's truck screeched into the driveway. The drive to pick up my car the next day was silent for the first 10 minutes. Then, without warning, Mark slammed on the brakes and pulled over. Who was that? His voice was eerily calm. Just a classmate, I said, my heart racing. He gave me a ride because you were running late. Don't lie to me. Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I've seen him around campus before. You told me you weren't dating anyone. I'm not. We just study together sometimes. You let him hug you. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Do you know what guys like that want? They'll take advantage of you. You're living under my roof, and I won't let some college boy. He stopped abruptly, as if catching himself. The rest of the drive was silent again, but different this time. Heavy. Threatening. When we got home, he acted completely normal around Sarah, but I couldn't shake the memory of his face in the car, the anger, the possession in his eyes. The next few days were uncomfortable. Mark was home more often, saying he wanted to be available for Sarah's pregnancy appointments. He was still the perfect husband, bringing her tea, attending every doctor's visit, making sure she rested enough. But something had shifted in how he acted around me. The casual conversation stopped. Instead, he'd just watch me with this unreadable expression when Sarah wasn't looking. At dinner, he'd bring up stories about college girls who got into trouble or mention news articles about campus assaults. Sarah would shake her head sympathetically while I pushed food around my plate. My car problems continued, probably because it was an old model with too many miles. When Mark helped me jumpstart it one morning, he mentioned casually, you don't need to ask other people for rides. I'm always available to help. That's what family's for, right? Alex and I kept meeting between classes, but I was more cautious now. We'd study in the library or grab coffee on campus, and I made sure to mention these meetups casually to Sarah, framing them as study sessions. If Mark knew I was still seeing Alex, he didn't say anything directly. But his pointed comments about college boys at dinner became more frequent. That weekend, Mark announced he'd signed up for a home security system. Just want to make sure everyone's safe, he said, looking directly at me. Especially with a baby on the way. Alex asked me to go to a college party with him the following weekend. I hesitated, knowing it would mean explaining where I was going to Mark and Sarah. But I was tired of walking on eggshells in my own home, so I told Sarah I was going to a study group party. She seemed happy I was finally making friends. Mark was in the kitchen when I came downstairs that Friday night. His eyes took in my outfit. Just jeans and a sweater, nothing special. Study group runs pretty late, he said, glancing at the clock. We're getting dinner first, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah already said it was fine. Did you tell her about the boy who's going to be there? Before I could answer, Sarah walked in. You look nice, she said, rubbing her growing belly. Mark, could you run to the store? I'm craving those chocolate cookies again. He hesitated, looking between us. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then he grabbed his keys. Don't wait up, he said. The way he said it made it sound more like a threat than permission. At the party, Alex introduced me to his friends as his girlfriend. It was the first time he'd used that word, and despite everything with Mark, it made me smile. When he drove me home later, we sat in his car for a while, talking and laughing. I felt normal for the first time in weeks. Then I saw the living room light flip on. Part 6, the front door opened, and Mark's silhouette appeared on the porch. My heart stopped. Alex squeezed my hand, not understanding the sudden tension. I should go, I whispered, reaching for the door handle. Let me walk you, no. I said too quickly. I mean, it's cold. You should head home. Mark stood perfectly still as I walked up the driveway. As soon as Alex's car pulled away, his posture changed. Inside. Now, in the living room, Sarah was asleep on the couch with a pregnancy book on her lap. Mark pointed upstairs, and I followed him to his home office. A study group. His voice was barely above a whisper. Do you think I'm stupid? We just went to a party. Nothing happened. I saw you in his car. How long were you sitting there? What were you doing? Talking. He's my boyfriend now. And you can't boyfriend? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did you forget our conversation? About stress? About your sister's pregnancy? Are you threatening to tell Sarah that I'm dating someone? That's insane. No, I'm reminding you what's at stake. Your sister's finally having a baby. Our baby. And you're sneaking around, lying, bringing boys to our house. This isn't about Sarah's pregnancy. This is about you being. I stopped myself. Even in my anger, I knew better than to finish that sentence. His eyes narrowed. Being what? Go ahead. Say it. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning as I weighed my options. Every path seemed impossible. Tell Sarah? After 3 devastating miscarriages, this pregnancy was her miracle. The doctors had been clear. Any significant emotional stress could trigger complications. She was already considered high risk, requiring weekly monitoring and constant care. I remembered how she looked after the last miscarriage 6 months ago. The hollow eyes, the silence that lasted weeks. She'd finally started smiling again when they confirmed this pregnancy was viable. Now, at 14 weeks, she was allowing herself to hope, to plan, to dream. Maybe I could tell someone else? But who would believe me? Mark was the perfect husband in everyone's eyes. He attended every doctor's appointment, remembered every craving, and spent hours researching the safest baby products. Who would believe that behind that devoted facade was something darker? My phone buzzed. Another message from Alex. He was worried about my sudden exit last night, wanted to know if everything was okay. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. How could I explain that my brother-in-law's obsession with me could potentially destroy my sister's last chance at motherhood? The sound of Sarah throwing up in the bathroom down the hall made my decision for me. I heard Mark's gentle voice comforting her, his footsteps as he went to get her crackers and ginger ale, his daily routine. For now, I would keep quiet. My sister's happiness, her dream of becoming a mother, had to come first.